HeHe girl. Oh my gosh, I am so pumped that you are here with us today. Thank you so much for
Hi.
joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I've known HeHe. We've followed each other, and as a fellow, like I said, sister doula, I've supported her and just love what she's doing for families out there. And to have her on our podcast to talk about, well, today we're talking all about pushing because I feel like that's something that we don't hear enough about. And hearing from HeHe on this topic is going to be so much fun. So, yes, thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited. I agree that it doesn't get enough light, and I think it's a place that a lot of people find themselves spiraling in birth because, they probably didn't even know to look into it, and
Yeah.
it is a very crucial part of the birth process. So let's learn how to do it.
Yes. Let's do it. I know we focus so much on the labor part and not so much on, okay, if you get to that pushing part, what do you do? So let's get into it. But before we do, actually, HeHe, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background so that we can have a better understanding of how you ended up to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a master's degree in human development and family studies, and I started my early career, like right out of college, in early childhood. And before that, I was working with families throughout the education system, helping them navigate that system and advocate for accommodations and create educational plans. And then I went to the early childhood, and I really learned about the childhood development in those, first like 0 to 5 years. And I learned about the problems with postpartum in the US. And then I started to dig into birth and I found, oh my goodness, there's so much that is wrong with our system when it comes to having a baby. And with the information that I had from my master's degree, I knew things could be better. With the skills that I gathered from the early childhood education sector and the public education sector, I was already kind of skilled in advocacy. And so I put those two things together and it created Tranquility by HeHe, which is my one-to-one service or concierge service for doula support. And then the birth lounge, which is our childbirth education. And it teaches you everything that regular childbirth education does: the pain relief, the birth positions, your partner's role, how to make a birth plan. But a key portion of what we teach, and it's not for everybody, so it is very specific for people who want to go in and be active participants, but we're teaching you how to actually advocate. So we're going to teach you, how do you actually interject yourself? What are the actual words that you use in situations? How do you truly stop a moment of obstetrical violence from transpiring? And then you get to kind of pivot your story, and you really avoided birth trauma in that situation, in a situation that a lot of people may not know how to speak up or what to say, or their instincts may make them freeze or fawn. Right? We talk a lot about that freeze or fight or flight, but we don't ever talk about freezing and fawning, which is very natural to a lot of women because we've been conditioned to be people pleasers and not be a difficult patient and be quiet and just, go along with it and be a good girl. But often being a good patient comes at the expense of your birth experience. And it's going to increase your risk of birth trauma. So that's essentially how I've gotten to today. Here I am
Oh
sitting
my
with
gosh.
you.
I know. And how many years now has that been?
Yeah, so I became a doula in 2016.
Yeah.
So 8 years as of this recording, and like quickly approaching 10 years, which is so wild. It really is
Wild.
just wild. It is.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And congratulations to you on
Oh,
all of that.
thank
That's so
you.
cool. And it really does just find you. And that's something that I've really enjoyed with HeHe. We both got into the birth world before having babies. And so people are like, wait, what? Most people get
Mhm.
into it after they have a kid and they learned whether they had a really good experience or had a really not so great experience. We're like, oh my gosh, no, women, we need to support you and help you. Oh, man, yes, so I love that, and I love hearing your story. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Look, I think that it makes for a very unique position to be a doula and not have children of your own, you truly are able to be completely unbiased because you don't have a story
Yes.
of your own. It's like whatever story you want, let's carve that out because I don't know. I've never done this before. I'm following your lead. This is your story, which is
Yes.
is still totally possible if you have your own birth stories, but a little bit harder because you have decisions that you have made and there was an outcome, whether it was good or it was bad, whether it was wanted or unwanted, that's going to color the lens in which you look through and you support from. And so it's just important that if you have your own birth stories, you're doing the work to keep those really separate. But in addition to that, I think it's going to make me a better birther and a better mom to have
Oh,
seen
yes.
so many. I mean, you're talking thousands of births
Yes.
that I've seen over the years of so many. There is no birth that is just like another birth. So it's like every single birth, even as many as you've done, you still walk away being like, wow, I learned so much. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of birth work is it's really never boring. But we're always learning new things to make things better, or we're learning what didn't work so that we can at least explore what could be better.
Oh yeah. Oh, he. I couldn't agree with you more. I, and I hate to say this, but I think I was a better doula before I had kids.
Oh, yeah,
Than when, I mean, and I have two kids now, and they make me tired. They
totally.
and having my own experience. Oh my gosh, and it's so hard. Actually, the last birth I was at, I missed my daughter's birthday party.
Oh, no,
I
because you're
literally
at a birth.
planned, yeah, because
Yeah.
I literally was setting it all up, and then I get called at 10 o'clock at night, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is it. This is happening."
I'm
I
gonna
knew it was
miss
gonna happen because
out.
it was a full moon, and I was like, "Okay, this is her telling me she's in labor." Sure enough, she was in labor. Missed my entire, like, and I had planned so intricately. The
Yeah.
princesses were coming, the like bounce house, everything, and I missed it all. And I was like, "Well," and then you go into that birth experience, you have to go in with like, all right, take a breath. And don't get me wrong, I had to leave after I got engaged and I had a engagement dinner. I had to leave during my engagement dinner to
Oh,
go to a birth.
no.
I've missed my husband's birthday 3 times.
Oh,
I've missed Christmas. I remember having to when we were going to my in-laws house, being like, sorry mom and husband, you have to go to my in-laws house by just you two and I'll see you later. So I mean, it's crazy what we go through as doulas. But I mean, so anyway, I'm just saying this because I'm a huge advocate of you. And I totally
no.
agree when someone's like, oh, you haven't had a baby, you don't understand. I'm like, girl, can I just stop you right there? There are plenty of men doctors who have never pushed out a baby and they're helping them have babies. So anyway, I digress. I just had to share all of that. That's just too funny. But let's talk about pushing. Okay, so HeHe, what are the first things that come to your mind when you think about pushing the topic?
Pushing in a good way or pushing in the way that the hospital teaches us? Where do you wanna start? Because 'Cause they're
I
very,
want
very different.
I want to start where your mind goes, whichever you think. Where should we start?
So maybe we will prepare you for what you're likely to encounter in the hospital, and then we can pivot to what you can do instead if that doesn't feel aligned to you. How about that?
Let's do it.
Cool.
Yes.
So, in the hospital, when it comes time to push, there's a couple of things that really stand out to me. Obviously, we know that providers have a preference to have you on your back. They're taught like that. It's easier for them. They can sit, whatever. It renders you pretty immobile. So it takes a lot of effort for you to get out of that position, and or you may not be able to get out of that position without help. That's a very compromising position. So if it doesn't feel good to you, you can definitely birth in any position that feels good to you. ACOG recommends that. ACOG supports that. So if you have a provider who is saying things like, you need to get on your back, you can't push like this, you can let them know. Actually, ACOG suggested I push wherever I feel comfortable, and this is it for right now. And I may change my mind. Um, pushing pushing too early and or having to subject yourself to a cervical exam in order to push.
Yes,
So
girl.
if you are planning to push a baby out of your body, you need to learn about two different things. First of all, early pushing urge. Within that, it's going to teach you about the Ferguson reflex and the fetal ejection reflex. They're very similar, but they are different. Then, in addition to that, you're going to want to think about what your provider's doing to you during pushing. Are they rushing you? Are they allowing you the space to, maybe feel that urge to push? That urge to push will come. So that's the second thing that you want to look into inside that pushing thing, inside that pushing realm is, oh gosh, it just left my head. Laboring down. You want
Yes.
to make sure that your provider is not rushing you, but you understand the risk of laboring down. The risks are different for unmedicated people versus epidural. Doesn't make
Right.
one good or bad. It just means that whatever your plan is for pain relief, know what those risks are. And then if you change, if you don't have time to get your epidural or you have a really long labor, decide to get an epidural, understand how the risks are going to change depending on medicated versus unmedicated, right? The
Totally. And
third
I want to
thing,
say that
oh yeah.
people do not know what laboring down is, probably, who are listening
Mm,
to this. So let's kind of go into that a little bit because I mean, I'll even say with my first baby, even I had a home birth with my midwife, and she checked me and was like, "Yes, you are complete. You can start pushing." But I didn't feel the urge to push. But she was like, "But Nina, he is right there. You can start pushing." So I did. 3 hours later, we're calling the
oh
ambulance.
no.
Yeah, we're calling the ambulance because I was pushing so long. Then he was getting in distress. And as soon as the EMT was walking up the stairs, I finally get him out. But I will tell you, HeHe, I broke every capillary in my face and my eyes. I looked like the devil because I was just trying to get, and he was coming out asynclitic, which for our
Wow.
listeners, it's crooked. Um, it was just not preferable. And looking back, I was just trusting my midwife. We have a really good relationship. And I was like, okay, she really thinks I'm going to be a good pusher. Apparently, I'm a better laborer than I am a pusher. So there's that. Um, and so what I should have done is listen to my gut and been like, I do not feel the urge to push, even though these contractions aren't fun. I want to continue laboring until I do feel that urge. And that is part of laboring down. But let's hear your also definition for our listeners, like laboring down. What is that?
Yeah, no, you did a really great job of explaining it. It's when your baby is, you're complete, you're 10 centimeters, but your baby is still pretty high in your pelvis. So there are stations of a pelvis. You
Mhm.
can think about your mid pelvis, the middle of it, usually kind of where the top of your pubic bone is. That's zero. It's neutral. Below that is a baby that's really engaged, and above that is a baby that's not quite engaged. And you can actually get far into labor, even complete 10 centimeters dilated, and your baby still not be really well engaged, right? You have the option to do something called laboring down. For people who are unmedicated, it is very beneficial and can be a very good and safe option if mom and baby are looking great the entire time. For people that have an epidural, we have limited data, and with that very limited data, it right now rests as not an evidence-based reason, because we know the longer that you go with things like an epidural, the higher your risk are, and it doesn't necessarily outweigh that laboring down. It doesn't always decrease your time of pushing either, but in unmedicated birth, it almost always does. If you will wait for that bodily urge, which goes back to the point of not getting a cervical exam, you don't necessarily need someone to tell you your cervix is ready to push, because if you're not feeling the urge to push, it's not time. If you are feeling the urge to push, you can probably trust your body. What is the risk? Why do they tell us that? Well, we don't want you pushing full force, grunting, holding your breath all the way down, pedal to the metal, pushing on a cervix that is not completely 10 centimeters. But in the case of a lip where your cervix may have a cervical lip, it may be a little thicker. So typically, if you're watching video, your cervix is going to dilate evenly around in a circle, right? So no matter where you feel in that circle, it's the same amount of thinness. Well, sometimes when we have a lip, you get to a certain place in the circle and you're like, wow, that is like fattier. It's a little squishier. It's not as thin. That's known as a lip. Sometimes we have a cervix that just needs a little oomph to finish. So, what we see with people who labor down unmedicated and they listen to those urges is um, panting. Tiny little pushes, little pants, or they will do these almost like little grunts. They're very feral, but they're short and they are almost nudging that cervix out of the way. In addition to this, you may be in a different position. You may be in like a proposal, one knee up, the Captain Morgan, one knee is up, one knee is down. Maybe in hands and knees. You may be squatted. You may be standing. You may be standing with your foot on the toilet, on a birth ball, on a step stool, right? And those little tiny grunts usually sound like, ugh, ugh, so they're not quite the panting, but they're not full on pushing.
Pushing,
And so
right.
exactly, you can see how when left alone, if the pushing urge unmedicated presents itself, you can trust that mom's body to do it, right? But when you get in a situation where you're 10 centimeters, your baby's still really high, and they go, you're 10 centimeters, let's push. We get a lot of situations where we're pushing for hours and hours. Sometimes it ends in a C section because we did push for hours and hours instead of letting that body slowly kind of drop that baby. And that's what happens when you labor down. As you labor
Yeah.
down, your cervix is done. It doesn't need any help. But what we're waiting on is those contractions to slowly bring your baby down. And sometimes you run into the situation in the hospital where they will say, well, we will let you labor down for this amount of time. As long as you and your baby are looking good, you don't have a fever, you don't have infection, everyone's vitals are good, we're thriving, we're just really waiting. It's a waiting game at this point. There is something to be said about considering just waiting and don't intervene. We don't need to break your waters. We don't need to add Pitocin. We can just let you rest and continue to labor with or without an epidural as long as you understand the risk that you're taking on. And both scenarios have risk. So it's which
Yeah.
one is are you comfortable with?
Yeah.
So
And I want to
that's kind
say
of laboring
thank you for
down.
bringing up station because so
Yeah.
many people only focus on dilation and effacement. They're like, and even effacement is
Mm.
not so much. They're really just focusing on how many centimeters am I dilated. And when your doctor or your midwife is like, oh, you're still 6 centimeters, I'm like, yeah, but what is her effacement? Maybe she went from 60% to 90%. Hey, that is progress. And then, okay, when you're 10 centimeters, okay, what is her station? What is the baby station in her pelvis? Understanding if baby is just at 0 or +1, +2, preferably +1, +2 to begin. And then she will feel more of that urge and can work with her body and her baby to get that baby out. And then the baby's not so much in distress. And then the mother is not so tired trying to get that baby to +1, +2. I mean, these are the things that women need to know about, that it's not just centimeters, it's not just dilation. We need to know that there are other components that we need to be aware of and work with our body, listen to our body. And oh my gosh, with my second baby, well, also second babies are just always faster. But I mean, I was like, screw that. I'm going to push when I want to push. And I remember telling my midwife, because I was in my bathroom in my tub, and I was like, no, I am pushing. I'm not telling you I'm literally pushing right now. It was just involuntarily. It just was this guttural, like get her out. And
Yes.
I pushed maybe twice and she came out. Also, that's a second baby, so there's that. But I mean, if I had waited a little bit longer, and I knew this, I've been to births, but for some reason, when you're in the moment, you're like, I'm trusting these people around me. I don't know. I'm really tired. And you're in labor land. But I was telling myself, horse lips, relax your jaw, move your, like telling all of these things to myself. But oh my gosh. So that's why we're having this conversation for all of you guys. And I love all these points that HeHe is bringing up. So with that, when is it that you normally recommend a mother to begin to push? When is that then?
When she feels that urge to push, right? If you don't have
But what
that
if she
urge to
doesn't
push,
feel that urge?
but why is it not coming? Is your epidural too
Maybe it's the
high?
epidural. Maybe.
Well, if it's too high, then we should turn down the epidural. We can't push out a baby with an epidural that's too high. We've got to turn
Oh,
the epidural down. Like, you have to have control and you have to have feeling. The point of an epidural is not to make you so numb that you lose all control. It is to give you comfort, but still let you be mobile and in control of your body. We need you to be able to feel where you're pushing and you're exerting your energy because, you made the comment about that was a second baby. If you think about the things, the components, the anatomical parts of our body that push out our baby, their reflexes. Reflexes are quick and instant. Pushing was never designed. It's like anti-body, it's anti-anatomical. It's against what our DNA knows, what our body is ingrained to do, to push for hours and hours and hours. It just is. Reflexes are in charge of that. That doesn't mean, though, that labor doesn't take that long. Labor is a long process. Your baby may need a long time to get down to your pelvic floor, your vagina, your cervix to activate these, let's call them sensors, that tell your body, hey, there's a big baby's head pressing on me. It's time to go. And within, your baby's head is, once that's activated, your baby's head is born in one contraction. They do what's called restitution, and their shoulders literally go from perpendicular to your vagina opening to parallel with it. They will twist inside of you, and that next contraction will spit out their body. And if it doesn't get their whole body, then the next contraction will do their belly button down typically. So your baby, once you have that urge to push, body wise, we're thinking a couple of pushes. It's when we push too early that we run into so many problems, because we're asking your body to do all the work that it would naturally do if we had left it alone, but in a way, way more efficient way.
for sure, for sure. What do you tell a woman who's like, but I don't want to turn my epidural down. I'm so scared. That's the whole reason why I have an epidural.
Totally, and I'm not trying to take your epidural away. I don't think that's the goal at all, right? That would be the opposite side of the spectrum. I think we're a little too far on the pain relief side, and I think we can
Hmm.
dial it down and just give you a better experience. I think you'll still have pain relief, you'll still have adequate coverage. We're not messing with your coverage. I'm just thinking that the dose may be too high for your goals. If your goals are to be able to get on hands and knees, we probably should turn your epidural down with that. With that, you should understand it may take a little bit. You may not see effects for 30, 60, 90 minutes after we turn down your epidural. So, in that case, your baby's just dropping lower and lower and lower in your pelvis. If you start to push, if you start to feel that urge to bear down, then perfect. That's what we were waiting on anyway. Let's go for it. Let's call your nurse in, or if she's not in there, let's call her in. If she's in there, you can say, like, call the doctor. I've got the urge to push, and then we can follow your body. And
Yes.
that's so much gentler than being told when to push, when to hold your breath. I still have two more things I want to talk about
Go
seeing
for
in the
it.
hospital. Can
Please.
I circle
Yes.
back to that? So
Yes,
the
absolutely.
next thing is holding your knees. We want knees in. But a lot of times the hospital staff will say, open up your knees. Well, we know that
Hmm.
closes our pelvis and we know that stretches our perineum so that it doesn't have any extra give. If you have good feeling of your perineum, you can trust that. When it says to close your legs, you can trust to close your legs. A lot of providers and nursing staff feel very comfortable physically opening up your legs. If that doesn't feel good to you and you don't want them to do that, you should stop them and you should say, please don't open up my legs. I'm going to listen to my body. Please don't touch my legs. If I need help moving, I will ask, right? Don't be afraid to set boundaries, because they may not be used to people knowing what they want and pushing. I mean, we opened up the episode with, like, a lot of people get here and we just don't know. And so you're coming into a territory where they're typically working with people who don't really know what they want and what their options are in this. So now that you know, you just need to set that tone and say, I kind of know what I want to do with my body. I'll ask you if I need any help. I
Yes.
please don't open up my legs again. It's really okay to ask that. Um, And then the second thing is holding your, or the next thing that I want to talk about is holding your breath. So a lot of times people will be told, like, take a deep breath in and hold it and push with all of your might down towards your butt, your butthole where you poop. Push like you're taking a poop. Um
Purple
that
pushing.
works for certain people for sure. I have had so many people over the years say that really worked for me. And for that, I love that for you. I really do. If that works, let's stick with it. It's proven to work for you. But the number of people that have come and told me that was so unhelpful. I had no idea what they were saying. I could not get the hang of it. And I feel like if I had better guidance, I would have been able to push easier, way outweighs the number of people who have told me that push like a poop works for them. You know, it's so many people come and say, like, I just don't, I didn't get it. I didn't get
Mhm.
it. And I'm now headed into my second birth and I still don't get it. So that's why I want to learn about how to push. And so what I would say to you is your breath is very powerful and people have different ways of utilizing their breath, usually depending on some sort of like athletics or workout or activities that you did as like a child or a young adult or previously in your life. So if you are, someone who is very fit, you may be conditioned to holding your breath, and that may feel good to you. If you're a yoga person, you may feel more powerful letting your breath out. If you were a swimmer, holding your breath is going to be more powerful for you. Your body has been conditioned to trust that. If you are, I don't even know, a power lifter, you may feel more comfortable letting your breath out. So understand what your body needs and what feels comfortable and safe to you. And then we want to utilize that. I typically teach people to blow out when they are pushing because it does better protect your capillaries that you had talked about. It is easier on your perineum. It is going to help prevent tearing because you don't have as much like oomph behind it. It's like pressing the gas pedal just enough, but not all the way to the floorboard right out of the gate, right? We're not like going pedal to the metal just because we're gonna give it a good go. And if we need to add more oomph, we can the next push. If you get to a place where you want to hold your breath and we're trying to maybe get a shoulder dystocia resolved on hands and knees, right? Your provider, especially if you were the home birth midwife, may say, flip over to your knees and give me a really good, hard push. Then you can hold your breath. You can give it all that go. But releasing that breath can be really powerful. But some people, they're obviously a little disclaimer that some people feel more powerful holding the breath. Okay, I think those are all my things that you're likely to encounter in the hospital because you have to think there's a whole system. They want you to do things a certain way because that's how they've been trained, that's how they're conditioned to see it. But there are other ways that you can do it.
You're right. And it's okay to try those things. I like how you said, like, hey, maybe that
Mhm.
works for you, but if it's not working, it's okay to say, hey, this isn't working for me. There are some other things that I'd like to try. My baby and I are fine. So let's try something new.
Totally.
And that's what I think people are wanting to know. Like, okay, if I'm not supposed to, I don't want to say that, but like, if that's not working for me, just taking a big deep breath in, holding it, and just pushing like I'm taking the biggest poop of my life. Well, then what should I be doing? So, should I be doing just shallow breaths? Should I just be doing little grunts? Like, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, so I answer all of this in the secret sauce to pushing. So it's definitely more than just one conversation. And with our one to one clients, we talk very in depth about pushing. And so you're going to want to know different scenario. So I talked about earlier that early pushing urge. It's called the EPU. You're not going to get this intense sensation to bear down because your body doesn't need that right now. That's not what it's asking for. It's asking for these tiny little gas pedal, teasers almost. Um that shoulder dystocia scenario that I just spoke about.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need a little more oomph. Babies that are asynclitic that you talked about earlier, babies that are face presentation and able to be born vaginally, a lot of times, and I give that disclaimer because a lot of times face presentation, a lot of times those babies really do require cesareans because they just physically won't fit. It's just a much wider part of the face, and the human pelvis is not always equipped to birth that. But babies that are face presentation and can be born vaginally, sometimes if your baby is not in that ideal head down, the crown. So we call it crowning because the crown of your baby's head is what emerges first. They are crowning. We can see their head coming out of your body. If that's not presenting first, your body must be in a place and have the space and have the flexibility and the capability to accommodate that. Some bodies will be able to, some bodies will not be able to. Some situations, like the face presentation, sometimes it will work, sometimes it will not work. So that's what I say to people. You have to think in different scenarios. And so you can start to think these through in your pregnancy. Start to talk to other women and say, how was pushing for you? And then go home that night and think, all right, if I run into a scenario that's like that, what will I want? Her provider was pushing Pitocin because they said that she had been complete for 2 hours and they really wanted her to start pushing. What would I do? Would I decline Pitocin? Would I want to start at a low dose? Would I want to say, no, thank you. I'm comfortable laboring down for X amount of hours before we have this conversation of Pitocin again, right? You have a ton of scenarios that you can think through. So take time in your pregnancy to start to think about, what do you want pushing to look like? What will you do when a provider says, Nina, you're not allowed to push in this position. You have to get on your back. It's hospital policy. How will you respond, right? Do you know that it's your right to say, I hear the hospital policy and I'm declining. I feel comfortable here, so I'm going to stay here. Please let me know if you need to get someone else in the room that can deliver me in this position if you cannot. You don't ever have to conform to the provider that's in your room. You're welcome to ask for someone else that just may be a little better suited and skilled to support you in birth in what you want.
Yeah. And that's, I think, something that a lot of people don't know is that they can ask for a new nurse and they can ask for a new doctor or midwife if
Yeah.
it's just not working out. That's something that they're like, oh, but this is who I have. And I just need to be, like you said, a good girl, a good patient, and do as I'm told and have my baby and hope for the best is essentially kind of like what I get the gist from most people who aren't being fully prepared.
Yeah, I mean it's tough, right? We we hope and we a lot of times think that the healthcare system is preparing us for everything that we need, and the reality of that is it's just simply not. There's just not enough time. Our providers are not equipped to do so. They the system is not set up like that even. And so seeking out neutral third party education that is, you know, nobody's completely unbiased, but has the biases that you believe in, has an approach that feels aligned to you, is non judgmental, is going to give you transparent education is really key, because you have to remember the hospital system is a business. It has motives and incentives. And unfortunately, a lot of that is not based on patient experience or even outcomes sometimes, sadly.
Yeah, it is. It really is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, hee hee. So what would you say, how can expectant mothers mentally and emotionally prepare for labor and pushing?
Yeah. So, education, knowing what you want. If you don't know what you want, then, I mean, you definitely can't. If you don't even know what you want, you definitely aren't going to be able to articulate that. But the second thing is learning how to articulate your goals and doing that early. So, take it into your provider. Once you learn the pushing method that you want to do, or position that you want to do, or breath work that you want to do, take it to your provider and say, hey, in today's prenatal, I was hoping that we could talk about pushing. It's something I've really been looking into. I've been doing a lot of reading and educating myself, and I feel like I have a pretty good handle on what I am hoping to achieve during that part of labor. Can we talk about that? And if your provider is not enthusiastically saying, yes, oh my God, let's talk about that. Cool. What kind of research have you been doing? You need to change providers if you can, right? Anyone who says, oh my God, you've been doing research, or don't do too much research because, the internet's kind of a crazy place. Is the internet a crazy place? Absolutely, it's a crazy place, but don't disempower someone by saying, don't do a lot of research. Instead, say, okay, be very caution where you get your research. There is a lot of misinformation out there. If you ever want evidence-based resources that I know of and trust, I'm always happy to share those with you, right? And you can always say that with your provider. Hey, I printed out some of the articles that I found very interesting and that are helping inform my decisions, and I wanted to share them with you to see if you had ever seen them and heard of them and to get your opinion on them, not your permission. I'm not asking, can I birth in a different position? I'm informing you, this is my preference. This is what I plan to do. How do you feel about that? And are you equipped to support me in this? I'm not going to change my preferences because you're uncomfortable. I'll change doctors to someone who is comfortable, right? Do keeping in mind that a lot of the US is a maternity care desert, so lack of access plays a role in this. Not everyone's going to have access to change providers. Insurance dictates a lot of decisions that are made about healthcare at the expense sometimes of patient care and outcomes.
You're absolutely right. And that actually is a perfect segue to my next question, because if you're unable to change providers, how can birth partners and doulas effectively support the mother during the pushing phase?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there is a protective piece and there's a physical piece. So I'll start with the protective piece and you don't let me forget to circle back to the physical piece, okay?
Got
So
it.
the protective piece is something that you're going to do in all of labor. It's not specific to pushing, but it's especially important in pushing. And this is to make sure that anytime your wife, the mom, that birthing person speaks, that everyone in the room hears it, right? So if we're all not already clued in to what she's saying, then you as the partner or the birth attendant, the doula, the support person, the sister, the mom, it's your job to say, "Oh, did everybody hear her say that she didn't want us counting anymore? It was distracting to her. She doesn't want that." You know? Oh, did you guys hear her say that the counting wasn't helpful? In this next contraction, maybe we'll all just kind of be silent and let's see how that works. It's okay for you to speak up and elevate her voice. If the room is not listening, that is your literal job, right? That protective piece. If she is saying no, and or if there's something happening that she's not aware of, and you know that she has feelings about it, and or you don't know if she's ever thought about it before, and you know consent hasn't been gotten, speak up. Say, "Oh, wait, Nina, do you know that your provider is thinking about cutting an episiotomy? How do you feel about that? Nina, I know that an episiotomy was super important to you. Do you want to have a discussion with your provider? I see that they're holding scissors. You're not accusing that doctor of wanting to cut a episiotomy. You observed him pick up scissors. You told Nina. That's it. Nina may be on her back. She may be totally fine on her back, and so she's comfortable there. She can't see what's going on. You know, maybe she's on hands and knees. She's not once looking at her back end. She's looking down at that bed. She's concentrating, and you see scissors into your doctor's hands. You just say, maybe you don't even say anything aloud, and you, as the doula or the partner, go over to the doctor and say, "Oh, I see you're holding scissors. Are you thinking about cutting an episiotomy? Is there a reason that, as a partner, I don't know, as a doula, I would ask, is there a reason that you're holding them? But as a partner, you could ask, is there a reason you're holding those scissors? Hey, doc, could you let me in on what you're thinking? I saw you pick up those scissors. You know?
hmm
Hey, doc, is
I
everything
literally,
okay?"
oh my gosh, I that brings me to a memory of being in a labor and delivery room, and the doctor came in to check her, and she was so sly while she was checking her. I guess she had told the nurse while she was outside or something. But she was checking her and she said, "Okay, and next I'm going to break your water." And she just grabbed it quickly from the nurse
God.
and inserted it and broke her water. And I was like, that was not asking for consent whatsoever. But in those moments when I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am as a doula, here to advocate for her and protect her. Sometimes these things, it's hard to catch everything. You're here, you're in the moment of like massaging her feet, doing whatever you got to do. But then these little moments of like, so if you don't catch those moments, I just want to say that's okay. Like, it's not your job to catch every little thing, but it is okay that when you see something, say something, ask, get
Totally.
curious. So I love that you bring that up, but it just brought me to that memory and I will never forget. And I was just, my jaw dropped to the floor, HeHe. And I was like, I cannot believe that just happened.
Yeah. And as a doula, you carry that with you like deep
Yes.
inside. There's a sense of failure. I failed that lady. There's a sense of guilt. I should have said something. There's a sense of, oh my gosh, am I even good at what I do if I don't speak up? And there's a sense of disbelief like,
Oh,
oh
I
my
didn't even have
God,
time to speak up. It happened before
exactly.
you could even say
That's
anything.
the disbelief is like, oh my God, at the just blatant disrespect, like the slyness, you said it, right? It was intentionally done fast.
Yeah.
There was never meant to be a discussion, and you must ask yourself, what kind of provider would do that, and what does that say about their philosophy and their belief around your right to autonomy and your right to declining things that don't feel good to you or being an active participant in your care. And you want to make sure that you're getting a care from a provider that wants you to be, they want your opinion, they want you to say, you know what, I want you to make whatever decision you want to make. I think this is an option, and we talked about the pros and cons. I think this is an option, and we talked about the pros and cons. I don't know that we offer this at that hospital, but I'm going to check on it. And if that's an option, I will come back and let you guys know. And then you guys have the freedom to say, yeah, we choose this option, or we choose that option, or you know what, right now, we're going to choose to do nothing. We can't make up our mind. We understand it's not super urgent. We understand too that this may not be an evidence based choice, but right now we're just going to take some time. We just ordered lunch. I'm going to maybe get a nap, and then we'll revisit this in a couple of hours because making this decision right now just feels too stressful.
So true. Oh my
Cool.
gosh. So HeHe, then you're also, you said to circle back on the physical. Did you
Oh,
cover everything on that?
no, so I didn't cover anything. So physical is helping them get into positions that they want to get in. So you elevated their voice. Hey, wait, did you hear her say she's not comfortable here? Nina, what position do you want to get in? And then there you go. Off my back. That is so easy. We can do anything off your back, Help her get on her side. Let her take a contraction there. Are you comfortable here? No, I want to be up. Okay? Hands and knees. Cool. Maybe we do another contraction on the sideline because we just had that conversation. We got caught in a contraction. After that contraction, let's get you up in hands and knees. Nina, are you comfortable here? Yeah, this is awesome. Cool. We're hanging out here until you say, I'm not comfortable here. And remember, we already established we're not counting, so it's silent during pushing. Maybe the next thing you say is, it's too bright in here. And your doula or your partner says, turn off the lights, please. It's too bright. She doesn't want it this bright. Please turn them off. She needs darkness. There's so many things you could say. And now you've really set that tone,
I know.
Now we're there. So the physical piece is also going to be reminding them of how to breathe. You have already explored kind of what feels good to you. So if you're someone who says, I want to breathe out, your partner is reminding you deep breath in and push it all the way down, right? I always describe the breathing during pushing as a French press. Earlier, I said that your breath is powerful. You want to fill it all the way up. It's going to touch the top of your lungs. You're going to fill all the way up to your neck. And then as you breathe out, you should visualize the top of your neck having this French press on it. And as you breathe out, the French press goes all the way down to your pubic bone. And that is how we get really powerful straight from our abdomen pushing. And that's very different than pushing rectally, which is what we do when we're pooping. We are pushing from our rectum because the poop, the feces is already down there in that rectal cavity. And so it just needs that portion. But with a baby, it's only the baby's head at your vagina. You're actually pushing with the top of your belly. It's called the fundus. And funny enough, it's made from your cervix doesn't actually like disappear. It kind of scoots back and a muscle at the top of your belly forms, and that's called your fundus. And that's the same thing that we measure or we are feeling for the fundal massage and the fundal checks, right? So you're pushing from the top of your fundus, very top of your belly. So if you have a big pregnant belly, take your hand and put it on your belly button. Bring your fingers all the way up to meet your rib cage, right where your breasts sit, and that is where you're pushing from the very top of your belly. That muscle at the very top. And when you push your baby down like that, the fetal ejection reflex, the Ferguson reflex, your cervix, they'll all get the message and they know what to do and they will spit your baby out. But don't forget, it's an equation. We need a baby down there. We need a cervix that's ready to take on those pushes. We need the fetal ejection and the Ferguson reflex activated, and we need you to know to push from the top of your belly.
Yes. Here, here. Oh my goodness. So people are then thinking, well, hee, how long can a mother expect to push during labor then?
Yeah, I mean, it varies, right? Our team has seen it all. We have seen mothers that have pushed for, holy cow, 6 hours. Traumatic births. I mean, it's traumatic for us witnessing it. It's traumatic for the medical staff because they're scared out of their mind that something's going to go wrong. It's traumatic for that dad or that partner because they're having to watch their partner work so hard for very little payoff. It's traumatic for that mom and that baby. They're working so hard. They are so stressed that those babies usually look scary on the monitors, like always on the verge of something being called, right? And you don't want that for anybody. So 2 to 3 hours is what your nurses in the hospital are going to tell you. I can tell you from experience, but not from an evidence-based standpoint right now because the data does not exist. We don't really look into this stuff, but anecdotally, over the last 8 years, I have seen that the fetal ejection reflex, that pushing urge, will bring it down to less than an hour. For even humongous babies, you guys, I have seen 11-pound babies be born in 4 minutes, 11 minutes, 25 minutes, and you're pushing out a 10-pound baby. I
Yes.
mean, you don't have to push long. I've also seen 6-pound babies take 45 minutes. I've seen 7-pound babies take an hour. I've also seen 6-pound babies take 4 hours, right? And I believe that when we look back on all of those births, the big key difference is the people who push for less than an hour were waiting for that pushing urge. We're waiting for your body to say, okay, give me that power. I'm ready. And when we do it too early, we really just burn out a lot of gas. And then when it's time to push our babies, our body really struggles.
Oh, yes, it's so true. I've lived it and it's like, oh my gosh. But then when you actually listen to your body, oh, it was less than 10 minutes. It's
There you
just
go.
magical at that point. Oh,
Did it
so much
feel
better.
different? It must have felt
Oh, yes.
different.
It felt like an ejection. The other one I was like it felt like I was manually having to push this child out and I just wanted to grab it and pull it out.
Mhm.
It felt forced is really what it is, the word forced. Whereas the other one, it just felt spontaneous. It
Yeah.
felt like here she comes and I just remember being in the tub and being like, "Oh my gosh, I have to push. Oh, I am pushing. I pushed twice and she was born." It's very different when you have that ejection type of type of experience versus like, okay, you're 10 minus or actually not even minus anything, just zero station, not a plus one, not plus two. Let's just push. You have a little bit of an anterior lip, Nina. Let's just push right through that and let's have a baby. Okay. Well, no. Not
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So, Hee, what are some challenges or complications mothers could face during pushing and how can they be managed?
Yeah. So we have to think baby's heart rate always, right? Certain D cells are expected in pushing. It's a pretty strained time for baby and for mom. That's why it's so short lived. Instant, some D cells are normal, I guess. So if there is I don't want to say like a certain type because I'm not a medical provider, but I want you to know that if your provider sees one D cell that is, a regular D cell, that's not necessarily a cause for concern because babies D cell a little bit in pushing. They should rebound or recover pretty quickly. And that's really what we're looking for. And how long is that D cell? How significant is it? You have to think they're really being compressed from all sides. And if your waters have broken, that intensity of that pressure is going to be greater on your baby. And so their heart rates are going to reflect that. We want to see that they recover and rebound pretty quickly. Complications like shoulder dystocia. So a lot of times when people are pushing on their backs, their pelvises don't have the space and the mobility to accommodate a baby's head and shoulders. And so you run the risk, an increased risk of shoulder dystocia. Your best way to resolve shoulder dystocia without a maneuver, so there are things like the corkscrew and the Mac Roberts and the Woods. There's a lot of maneuvers out there that we can resolve shoulder dystocia. But something that is taught by indigenous cultures and is much less invasive. It's a maneuver, but it's not as invasive as those other. It's just flipping on your hands and knees. And then if that doesn't resolve it, you're going to get one of your knees up into a runner's lunge. And it gives us an uneven pelvis. And a lot of times those babies will slip right out. If you have a provider that does not know about hands and knees, they are going to know about one of those other maneuvers. So you should look up those maneuvers to see which ones you're comfortable with and which ones you are not.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
they all come with their own different risk, right? The third thing, complication, I don't know is the right word that I would use, but rather a very common practice slash almost a standard of care is going to be one-step delivery. So I previously kind of laid out what happens. Your baby's head exits. They do that restitution where they rotate. Their shoulders exit and typically their chest cavity. And if the rest of their body doesn't fall out from like their belly cavity down, will be expelled in the next contraction. It's very quick process. Not as quick as one-step delivery. So what I just described where your body does it naturally is two-step. The head is the first step, restitution, and the rest of the body is two-step. 1 degree or yes, like one-step delivery is where your baby's head comes out, and without waiting for the next contraction, your provider will slip their fingers into your vagina, or they do it by your baby's head. We all see the videos online where babies are grabbed by their neck, by their chin, and their skull, and they twist your baby in order to manually do that restitution, something that your body would have already done. And they get your baby out that way. Just two different approaches that achieve very similar, they achieve the same thing, although there are associated risks with the one-step delivery, such as breaking your baby's collarbone or causing some sort of, neck injury. Um,
Or causing you to break your tailbone.
Totally increase risk of tearing, which is going to increase your risk of postpartum hemorrhage and bleeding too much. There are a lot of things that can happen when we're too rough in that area and during that time where two-step delivery may feel much more aligned with you. Two-step delivery is not something that all providers are going to be familiar with. So
No,
you
definitely not.
may need to educate your provider and say, hey, I have a preference. I want to talk to you about it today in today's prenatal. And they say, yeah, what's up? And you say, so two-step delivery really feels more aligned to me than one-step delivery, which is that what you do during, and they may say, I don't know what you're talking about. And you say, so when my baby's head pops out, can you talk me through what your next steps are? If they say anything other than, I just watch your baby and make sure that they have restitution, and I'm just like making sure they're turning and they're coming out, then they are practicing one-step delivery. Your baby is not going to need to have any sort of hands on them. They'll do it themselves. And we can see
Mhm.
that in home births, in midwifery-led births, in mother-led births where the mom says no hands, I want to be the person that delivers my baby. Her baby's head will pop out, their shoulders will pop out, and she will instinctively reach down and pull them up to her chest.
Love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, HeHe, we're coming to the end of our recording, and I want to know, like, to summarize, what are your just top tips for mothers to prepare and endure the pushing phase of labor?
Yeah, absolutely. Wait for the urge to push. If you're not feeling it, it's not time. If you have an epidural and you're worried that it's too high, turn it down slowly and incrementally so that you can strike the balance of getting relief but having control. Keep your knees closed if that feels instinctual to you. Follow your body. Push in a position that feels good to you. And then finally, I think listen to your body. If your body is telling you that you need to do something and it doesn't necessarily line up with the timeline that the hospital says, it's okay to say, I'm listening to my body. If your body is telling you to do small pushes or really big pushes, listen to that. I trust your body. I also trust your body to tell us when something is not right. And it's our responsibility to respond and react to that. So that's what I will leave you with.
Those are great. Oh my gosh. And I have to know, HeHe, how do you plan when you have your baby? How do you plan on having your baby?
Yeah, at home, and I think that my doulas will be my doulas, and like the doulas that work for me, I think will be at my birth. And I'm not sure who I want to attend my labor as my midwife or my home birth attendant, but yeah, home birth for me, as long as everything's good and safe.
Love it. That's too fun. Oh my gosh. We can't wait to follow along that story when it happens. And yeah, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, I don't think so. Follow me on social media. I have a podcast, a Birth Launch podcast. If you want to learn how to advocate for yourself, I have really real conversations. So don't come if you are not ready to really take a good look inside of yourself and to really kind of find your voice, because I'm going to push you to love yourself deeply and really stand up for the things that you deserve, because I believe that you deserve that.
Amen. We agree. Oh my gosh.
Woo!
This was so fun. It's always just a joy chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with all of us. We just genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Oh, of course. And for our listeners out there, to learn more about HeHe, you can find her online at tranquilitybyhehe.com, thebirthlounge.com, or her podcast, as she mentioned, the Birth Lounge podcast, or Instagram at
Yep.
Tranquility by HeHe. Our team will be posting today's episode on our Baby Chick Facebook page and Instagram page at the Baby Chick Chat. So if you have any questions or comments about this discussion, please share them with us in the comments section. And as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to Chick Chat, the Baby Chick podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us an honest review. Cheers to a positive pushing and birth experience.